Welcome friends. In this lecture, we will discuss about classifications of proteins. As we know that proteins are important macromolecules of the cells, and proteins performs a variety of functions such as it acts as structural components of cells, also act as enzymes, hormones, pigments, act present as a storage protein, and some proteins are also toxins. Proteins are classified based on the following three criterions. First is classification based on shape or structure. Second is classification based on composition of proteins. Third one is classification based on the functions of proteins. So these three criterions are used to classify different types of proteins. So first of all, we will discuss classification on the basis of structure or shape. So they are classified into two types. First one is fibrous proteins. Fibrous proteins are made up of long rod-shaped or string-like molecules that can intertwine with one another and form a strong fiber-like structure. Fibrous proteins are insoluble in water and they are the major components of connective tissue. They are elastic in nature and are present in hair, mostly present in hair and skins. For the famous example are collagen and keratin, which are present in hair, skin, and hair. The next type is globular proteins. Globular proteins are more spherical in shapes and they are dissolved in water or they form stable suspension in water. So these are known as globular proteins. Globular proteins are not found in the structural tissues but are transport proteins, and because they move easily throughout the body by the help of circulatory system. For example, the example of globular proteins are hemoglobin and transferrin, which we know already. The next type is classification of proteins based on composition. So they are, first one is simple proteins. Simple proteins contain only amino acid residues. They may be either fibrous protein or globular and have relatively simple structural organization, for example, collagen and keratin. So simple proteins contain simply amino acids. The second one is conjugated protein. Conjugated proteins contain other organic or inorganic components known as prosthetic group. So they are further classified into nucleoproteins. In nucleoproteins, the prosthetic group is nucleic acid that either DNA or RNA, for example, proteins and chromosomes. So the chromosomes, we know that chromosome contain DNA and also proteins known as histones. The next one is lipoproteins. In this, the prosthetic group is lipids and they are present in membrane. The next one is glycoprotein. It contains carbohydrate as a prosthetic group. Example of glycoprotein is gamma globulin present inside the blood. The next one is phosphoproteins. It contains phosphate group as a prosthetic group. And the example is the casein, which is present inside the milk. Hemoproteins contain heme, and it is the present in hemoglobin, myoglobin, and cytochrome. These are the example of proteins which contain heme as a prosthetic group. Next one is metalloprotein. It contains metals, for example, iron. So iron is present in ferritin and hemoglobins. These are the proteins which contain irons. Next is the classification based on functions. So proteins are classified based on their function into catalytic proteins. They are also known as enzymes. These proteins have the ability to function within the living system as a biocatalyst, which is also known as enzymes. Nearly 2,000 different kinds of enzymes are known, each catalyzing a different kind of reaction. So this is very important types of proteins. The next type is regulatory proteins, which is also known as hormones. These are the polypeptides and small proteins found in relatively small, so lower or small concentrations, but they play a highly important regulatory role in maintaining order in complex metabolic reactions. For example, growth hormones, insulins, and we know that growth hormones and insulin play an important role inside our body. So these are the examples of regulatory protein. Next is the protective proteins, which is also known as antibodies. They have protective function. They combine with foreign substances, for example, antigens and other substances, and fight against certain diseases. For example, the example of antibodies are immunoglobulin, which is present inside the body. They are produced in spleen and lymphatic cells. So spleen and lymphatic cells are responsible for the production of immunoglobulins. So these are the examples of protective proteins. The next type of proteins are storage proteins. They are the major class of proteins which functions of storing amino acid as a nutrient and building block for the growing embryo. Storage proteins are a source of essential amino acid which cannot be synthesized by the human beings. So it is it is present inside the diet we consume because the body cannot make the essential amino acid, and the major storage proteins in pulses is globulins and prolamins is in cereals, and in rice is glutenin. Also, albumin is present in egg and casein in milk. They are examples of storage protein. So the pulses contain globulin and the cereals contain prolamins. Rice contains glutenin and albumin is present in egg and casein in milk. These are some examples of storage protein. There are many other storage protein also present in different types of plants and also in animal products. Next type is transport proteins. These are capable of binding and transporting specific types of molecules through blood. For example, the important example of transport protein is hemoglobin. It is a conjugated protein composed of colorless basic protein, the globin and heme. It binds with oxygen and transport through blood to various tissues. So it transports oxygen through blood to various types of tissues. Also, lipid bind to serum proteins like albumin and transport it as a lipoprotein and the lipid. So these are examples of transport proteins. The next type is toxic proteins. Some proteins are toxic in nature, such as ricin, which is present in castor bean, and it is extremely toxic to higher animal in very small amount. The next type is lectin. It is a toxic protein present in legumes, and it agglutinates RBCs, red blood cells. Next is the bacterial toxin. It causes cholera. The bacterial toxin that causes cholera is a protein, also protein. The snake venom is also proteins in nature. So these are some example of toxic proteins. So proteins are also toxic in nature. The next type is structural proteins. It serves as a structural materials are as important component of extracellular fluid. The example of structural proteins are myosins, which is present in muscles, keratin inside present in the skin and hair, and collagen is present in the connective tissue, which is present inside the muscles. The next type is contractile proteins. Proteins like actin and myosin function as essential element, elements in the contractile system of the skeletal muscle. So these are the example of contractile proteins, myosin and actin. The next type is secretory proteins. Secretory proteins such as fibroin is a protein which is secreted by spiders and silkworm to form web and cocoon. So these are known as the types of secretory proteins. The last one is exotic protein. Exotic proteins are present in exotic fishes which live in a very cold environment where the temperature is minus 1.9. These fishes are prevented from freezing by the antifreeze glycoprotein which is present in their body. So these glycoproteins act as an exotic protein. So these are different types of classifications of proteins. Thank you for watching.